YouTube. And then I see there's a question in the Zoom chat as well. So question, are any of you seeing more decks coming out that are geared more to masculine energy? Good question.
Interesting. I don't know that I've seen more come out. That's interesting. I haven't looked at other people's lists with that question specifically in mind. I think that the number of proposals that I'm getting are still about the same balance as they were, which still tends to be very woman-centered for the most part. I know someone was asking about key customers before, and we hadn't chatted about that yet, but I think that men represent a really underserved piece of the market, just from what I've seen, and from hearing guys I know who are involved in the category. So I know gender-neutral and guy-friendly decks are something that we always have our eye on, and if we have a deck that we feel works for that customer base, like that's something that we tout out to our stores and things, because I think that the market tends to overlook guy customers, and I see Nick in his fist there.
Yeah. Honestly, you go to an event as a guy, it's like they're 90%, 80, 90% female. That percentage might be reducing a little bit in the last few years, but it's still there, right? I love to see a lot of masculine content. We have an amazing deck by Aubrey Marcus. If you've heard of Aubrey Marcus, he's very famous. He's got 1 million followers on Insta. He's big in that spiritual domain. And he did Awaken the Darkness as a documentary. I don't know if you know about darkness therapy, but you can go into a darkened room for 7 days and you pretty much hallucinate. And he made a documentary about that, and we worked with the artist who worked on that project, and we have a undeckable that is very masculine. It's Aubrey Marcus and a bunch of quotes. It's an affirmation deck. It's very cool. It's called Awaken the Darkness.
Very cool.
I think we just need to see more. We need more guys to bring that to the fore. There are a lot of male decks out there actually, but there's lots of people individually fragmenting and making their own content, right? So.
And hey, on the note of we all love the idea of this work becoming more accessible to everyone, I often would ask this in healing circles because I would have a similar experience to you, Nick, because I get to be a female, that I'm in these rooms going, wow, I would be overwhelmed if I was a man here. And I feel a little bit out of my depths, right? So this accessibility is also just like relatability. Can we just be all on the same page and say this is applicable to all of us? I see more women joining my intuition development program. I always feel so weird if there's not men in it, right? And so I hold the container until there's men who have said yes to joining, because we learn differently through learning how everyone sees things as well, and can give us really important philosophy and perspective. So I'd also love to see more content that would be directly relatable to the male population. Anna, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think similar to what has already been said, but I do feel there has been a shift compared to when I first got started on my spiritual journey. I feel there are definitely more men on this journey now too, and I do see there's more demand. Working with clients, most of my clients have been women. I've worked with maybe one guy or two, but it's definitely something I look for as well. And now while I'm creating my deck, it's a fairy deck and it's probably going to speak a lot more to women than men, but I do like to include more masculine energy in it. I'm pretty intentional about that because I feel it's lacking, and we do need that balance too. Even as women, we need that balance as well. There's so much to be said about that, but I do feel there is spiritual realm. It's so vast, and there are different modalities that we work with. And definitely, I think depending on the topic or the modalities, there are certain areas where there are a lot more men. For example, breath work that my partner does, we almost always have men in there too. There are more women usually too, but I definitely think there's a demand, and I've heard from people, including a lot of men, saying there is that need for more community and support. So
I was gonna reiterate your point. I was gonna mention breath work as being more of a male thing, and maybe yoga too. But men at yoga has definitely gone up as a trend, and I think breath work too. I think
there's a physical experience to that is so much easier to relate to, and that when it's intuition and spiritual and esoteric, and then you hear someone talking about something you never heard of, you feel like, how can I succeed? How can I actually drive forward with this? And that perspective would be like, what can I do here? Whereas we know we can breathe, right? But that unknown piece about this.
They're like gateway modalities to this, right? The other thing that just popped into my head on this topic is archetype decks. There are a lot. Archetype decks tend to have a more fuller spectrum of masculine, female energies. I know we have a masculine archetype deck on Deckable as an example, but there's just, and I like the idea of contrasting stuff. Like there's a lot of darkness decks, like the dark side, the shadow work decks, and then male, female energy, flip side, contrasting. It's an interesting space. Good question.
Absolutely. And then we have Michelle here with a question, which